This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have some major news as it relates to California's effort to redraw its maps. Republicans have now filed a brand new lawsuit. So first and foremost, can you explain what this lawsuit is and its chances of succeeding?
Yeah, it's a garbage lawsuit with almost no chances of succeeding. But that said, we have to take it seriously because Republicans are pulling out every single stop they can to block this from going forward. They are petrified by what Gavin Newsom is doing. They are afraid that this is going to succeed. And so we have to take this seriously. All right, here's what they allege. They say that the initiative that the governor has sponsored and put forward violates what is called the single subject rule. Now, many states that have this ballot initiative referendum process have a single subject rule. It basically prevents you from taking two unrelated topics and putting them in one initiative, because then the fear is you don't know which the voters actually approved. So if you have an initiative that says, look, we want to provide tax cuts for the adoption of puppies, and we also want to promote the purchasing of cigarettes, you can't put those two together because they violate the single subject rule because there's no relationship between the two. They are arguing that this violates the single subject rule. That is nonsensical. It doesn't comply. That does not comport with what the controlling precedent in California is, which is that the topics simply need to be germane to one another. They don't need to be exactly the same as long as all of the topics in the initiative relate to one another. That's good enough. Obviously, everything in this relates to redistricting, relates to a single map. So this is not going to succeed. But again, it shows you just how desperate they are and how much money and resources they are willing to pour in to even these kinds of long shot legal efforts.
Well, on that topic of the Republicans throwing everything they have into fighting the California redraw, Trump himself just announced that the DOJ will also be suing California. Can you give some idea of what they're looking to do, what their legal argument would be?
Yeah, look, if the first lawsuit is kind of a frivolous long shot, I take deadly seriously the fact that the Department of Justice is going to file a lawsuit. Anyone who thinks that when the full power of the federal government comes into a federal court, that they do anything other than start with a little bit of a built-in advantage doesn't understand the relationship between the Department of Justice and federal judges. And even though in this instance, their claims will be without merit, we have to take this very, very seriously. This is an all hands on deck moment, everyone. You cannot stop paying attention to what's happening in California. Donald Trump himself is saying from the White House that he is going to dispatch his cronies, his lackeys, Pam Bondi, Harmeet Dillon, and the like, to try to defeat this ballot initiative in court. And so we have to take this very, very seriously.
What is their legal argument to be able to say that that the federal government has a right to be able to interfere with something that's very clearly a state issue?
Yeah, so I assume their argument is going to be one of the following. And obviously, I don't know. They don't, Harmeet Dillon and Pam Bondi don't consult with me on their legal claims. But I assume their claim is going to be one of the following. Number one, they may argue that the map is a violation of the Voting Rights Act. Yes, that's right, everyone. If you looked up hypocrisy in the dictionary, you would see a picture of Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, and Harmeet Dillon filing a lawsuit in California saying that they are worried that the lawsuit violates the Voting Rights Act, the very act that they themselves are trying to strike down in court in the U.S. Supreme Court, right. The very act that they are sent Texas in to pass a map that violates. But that could be one thing, right? Because there are obviously a lot of communities in California that are minority voting communities. Number two, they may say that it is some type of racial gerrymander. Also, when you're done looking at page 1 in the dictionary of hypocrisy, you turn to page 2 and also see more pictures of Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Harmeet Dillon. I don't think either of those claims are going to go anywhere. I don't think either of them are serious claims. I have studied this. I'm obviously an expert in the Voting Rights Act and racial gerrymandering cases. I've won 4 cases in the U.S. Supreme Court involving these kinds of claims and dozens others at lower courts. So I don't think those claims are meritorious, but I think they're serious. And I think the Department of Justice will make a lot of noise about those kinds of claims. What else might they say? They might invoke essentially a version of the independent state legislature theory. they may very well say that a ballot initiative cannot be used to draw lines. This is a claim that Republicans advanced in Arizona and almost won, 15 years ago, where they tried to strike down the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. They're obviously unhappy with what's happening in Utah, where that state's Independent Redistricting Commission is going forward. And this is not an Independent Redistricting Commission. In fact, they kind of want the Independent Redistricting Commission map in place here in California, but it's like a variant of that. What they want to say is that the ballot initiative process can't be used, that's an infringement on the legislature. Now, again, they got a lot of hurdles to get through here, including the fact that the Supreme Court has rejected these kinds of claims before, including the fact that if they won, they'd probably empower the legislature to draw its own map because it would probably strike down the commission itself. So they're trying to thread a needle here in saying, no, you can't, the Constitution says you can't have it done by ballot initiative while leaving in place it can be done by a citizen redistricting commission. Right. Boy, that seems like an awfully hard thing for them to pull off. If they try it, the most likely outcome is that a court just rejects it. The second most likely outcome is that they overshoot the mark and actually strike down the Independent Redistricting Commission too, and then it will just be up to the governor and the legislature to pass a map.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, isn't that a very precarious position to take in a place like California where already 2/3 of the legislature are Democrats? And the only reason that these Democrats are bringing this map to the citizens is to just make it a more democratic process. But otherwise, they would basically be saying, okay, the referendum process is unconstitutional. So instead, let's just skip that. We'll just vote the map into existence. We'll just approve the map by fiat, and then we still get what we want even quicker without even the hurdle of having to go through a hundreds of millions of dollars worth of campaign to convince California voters to actually approve this thing.
Look, even better from my standpoint, and I agree, understand where I come from on this, everybody. I don't believe in fighting fire with water. I don't even believe in fighting fire with fire. I think you treat fighting fire by dropping a nuclear bomb on top of the fire and having it go out. So my view is, if ultimately they are successful in striking down the referendum, and that takes out the commission, the legislature ought to come in and draw a map that gets rid of 9 Republican seats. It ought to draw a 52-0 map.
Right.
Because at that point, presumably Governor Newsom chose this more middle ground, as I'll call it, of 5 seats, because that is what is politically possible in a world in which he needs to pass a tens of millions or hundreds of millions dollar referendum process through the public. But if there is no barrier, if this is just the Democratic legislature and the Democratic governor, I certainly hope they would do better than 5 seats.
So I guess the question now becomes, folks are going to watch this and they're going to say, you're suing Texas because of their unconstitutional power grab. And so why is it okay that we sue Texas over their map redraw, but it's not okay that Republicans are suing California over this effort here?
Look, I mean, this is the stupidity of Republican arguments that I get all the time. They routinely say, well, why is it that Mark Elias gets to win 60 cases of the post-election and our lawyers don't get to win 1? And the answer is because, we're right on the law, right? I mean, why do I get to sue Texas and win? And why do they sue California and lose? Because we're right on the law. What they did in Texas is illegal and unconstitutional. I mean, what they did in Texas is, in fact, to target minority voters and to dismantle districts so that more white Republicans get elected. Okay, that is what they did. And so that's illegal. That is unconstitutional. Their effort to do mid-cycle redistricting in the way in which they are doing it is a violation of the one person, one vote. What Governor Newsom is doing in California, whether you agree with it politically or not, is clearly legal. I mean, California has an initiative and referendum process.
Right.
People in other parts of the country may be like, we don't think you should be able to do that. We don't think you should be able to do direct democracy, or we don't think you should be able to draw maps that way. But that's the law in California, and it's well established. And like I said, this single subject issue, I've looked at very carefully in California. This clearly is a single subject under California law. And so Why do Republicans lose there? Because like their legal theory is nonsensical. I really don't understand for a party that claims that they want to be merit-based and they want everything to rise and fall on its merit, when it comes to the fact that they are constantly losing election cases and that my team and I win them, it's like they want socialism. They feel like for every case I win, they get to win a case. It just doesn't work that way.
It's like the participation trophy standard that Republicans are looking to usher in, courtesy of the same people who are complaining about DEI and the lack of meritocracy.
Absolutely. I mean, we just won a big case in the Third Circuit over the undated ballot stuff that's been going on there for forever. And I was like literally reading, I never post on X anymore, and I try not to read that right there. And there's like all these Republicans commenting, being like, this is not fair. And I'm thinking like, what do you mean it's not fair? Like you could argue with the law, but I mean, we obviously were right on the law because the Third Circuit agreed with us. By the way, a George Bush appointee wrote the opinion. But like this notion, like you say, of a participation trophy is not going to go anywhere. But back to California, I do think, Brian, like I said, we have to take seriously the fact that Donald Trump, who controls the best resourced legal operation in the world, namely the Department of Justice, that we have to take that seriously. And the fact is that there are still far too many federal judges that when someone stands up from the government and says, I'm here on behalf of the United States, they sort of say, okay, well, then there must be some there.
Right. It's this presumption of regularity that by the way, the federal government is kind of coasting off of years and years and years of goodwill at the hands of good prosecutors and good attorneys who were acting in good faith, and then just basically using that to advance their own, completely legally tenuous, if not baseless, arguments themselves.
That's exactly right. It is that presumption of regularity that, frankly, will undermine our democracy in the end. If judges don't stop doing that, we're in for a very long 3.5 years.
Well, look, all of this underscores the fact that that the work that you're doing by fighting this stuff, not just in the media where it's absolutely needed, but in the courts, which is the front line of these battles, is as important as it gets. So one small step that everybody watching right now can take to support Mark's work as he fights these battles, as he's waging these lawsuits in Texas, for example, one small step we can all take is to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Completely free, small lift. Just hit the subscribe button. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. The link to my channel is on the screen as well. If you're not yet subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. Help support our work and support independent media more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.